Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome back to the show. My name is indeed Avrum Rosensweig, and I will remind everybody that the reason why we do this show is to pat humankind on the back, and we do that through inspirational interviews. My idea is to put out as much positive energy as possible into the world, with the theory that we actually live in a very, very beautiful world with some very bad pockmarks. But that aside, we have accomplished so much in the last 6,000 years, 200 million years, 6 billion years, however you want to quantify it or qualify it. And I think we should not lose sight of that. So what I do in my quest to bring that positive energy to you is I bring on interviews or individuals who are just fascinating human beings, who have accomplished a lot in life, and somebody whom we can grow through. So I always tell people, when you're listening to the interview, try to incorporate into your own psyche, into your own ideas for life, what that person did in order to succeed, and find your own personal zone. So let's get into that. I wore a suit and tie today, and I do that not very often because of the tremendous respect that I have for my guest today, and his name is Julian Schlossberg. How are you, Julian?
I'm fine, Avrum, and thank you for that lovely compliment, and I hope that it's deserving.
Well, I'm going to leave that up to our viewers because I do believe it's deserving. Before I launch into who you are, I like your name, Schlossberg. Who was it who called you Schlossberg as though it was two different names?
Mel Brooks.
Yeah, why did he do that?
Well, Mel Brooks has got a very unusual sense of humor, as
Yes,
we
he
all
does.
know. And
Yes,
to
he
him, that was really funny. And I probably didn't remember my first name either, for all I know. But yeah, he would do that. Schlossberg is an interesting name when it translates from German. Schloss is a castle, and Berg is a mountain or a hill. And when I started my company, I decided I had left Paramount Pictures, who had a mountain as their logo. So I decided, well, I better not take a mountain because I'm only starting a company. So I made it Castle Hill. And
good
Castle
thinking.
Hill Productions was a company I owned for many years.
Okay, now Schlossberg, has it served you well, that name?
Actually not, no. I can't say that it did. It didn't. I mean, in school, it was really tough because they
Yes.
couldn't pronounce it a lot of times. You know, if you put SCHL together, it's rare that you have 4 consonants in anybody's name. It's
Correct.
just rare. And unless you're of the Jewish persuasion, you're going shla, shlu, shlaba, shlaba. It was
Yes.
really very sad to see either Irish teachers, African-American teachers, whomever, Asian teachers, they were stymied by SCHL. And so I was slinking in my chair.
Yes.
Uh-oh, it's coming to the S's now. They're going to destroy my name. And they did.
And they always did. How are you, or Julian? Do you remember when you would have to speak to the operator before you made a long distance call? For me, my name is Avrum Rosensweig. It's clearly not Mike, Mike McDonald, and there would be such a mess. Rosen what? You know me. I'm sure you had that too.
I'm surprised you got by Avram.
Yeah, I know that was a problem too.
You know, we do know that Avram is Abraham in many places, and
Yes, it
also
is.
I think the High Father, isn't that something like that?
Abraham is father of all nations, of
Yeah.
Raham. Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think based on what you do on your podcast, you're trying to be the father to all of us, and I think that's something we should all be pleased about because
Thank you.
it is true. We should look in the positive of a world that sadly has both positive and negatives. But if we can kind of think that the glass is at least half full, we're better off than thinking it's half empty.
Half full with a few more drops added to take it into that higher level.
Well,
I
that's
think
what the show is about.
That's what the show's about. It's the extra drops. Nicely said. So, folks, I'm going to do a Harvey Brownstone here. If you haven't watched Harvey's show, you need to, because he is rising up in the ranks to be one of the world's finest podcasters. He interviews stars. He's a mentor. He's my mentor. He's a friend of Julian's, and he's an unbelievable human being. When Harvey does an introduction, really, you could stop the show right there. Would you agree with me, Julian?
I would, actually. In fact, when he did the show with me, at the end of it, I thought we were at my memorial.
Would you want to be at your memorial?
I will be.
You will be. That's
my plan. I'll be hovering.
Hopefully I'll be there, but you should live a long life till 120, like we say.
Thank you so much.
So here, listen to this introduction. It's longer than I normally do, but I think it's worthwhile. Welcome to this episode of the Avrum Rosensweig Show, where we dive into the life and career of a true powerhouse in the entertainment world, New York-born Julian Schlossberg. Julian was born in 1941 and grew up in what he describes as a middle-class family in the Bronx neighborhood that at the time was heavily Jewish and Irish. Julian worked in the 60s as a cab driver, a busboy, a waiter, a counselor, a typist, and more while taking college classes at night. Then he got a job at ABC in 1964. He worked his way up the company's ranks. Over the decades, Julian then carved out a truly impressive and amazing legacy as a film producer, author, talent manager, college professor, theatrical producer, with a track record that spans everything from groundbreaking films to unforgettable Broadway hits. Julian's feature films include Widow's Peak, starring Mia Farrow, In the Spirit with Peter Falk, Marlo Thomas, Melanie Griffith, and Olympia Dukakis. No Nukes, I like this one. Rock Document, starring Bruce Springsteen, James Taylor, Carly Simon, Bonnie Raitt, and Jackson Browne. 10 from Your Show of Shows, starring Sid Caesar and Imogen Coca. He's done over 60 productions. Known for his key eye for talent and his ability to bring creative visions to life, Julian has worked some of the most iconic names in the industry, shaping the careers of artists and bringing unforgettable projects to the big and the small screen. Now, speaking of Jews, I do that all the time. Speaking of Jews, Julian has worked with a virtual who's who of famous Jewish entertainers over the years, from Neil Simon to Lillian Hellman to Sid Caesar to Mike Nichols to Peter Falk to Ethan Cohen. And the ones he didn't work, he used to hang out with a little bit. Barbara Streisand invited him to a famous birthday party that ended up taking place at Liza Minnelli's house. Mel Brooks, as we said, who called you Schlossberg, as if your name were two names. In today's episode, we explore his remarkable journey through the entertainment industry, the stories behind the projects that help define a generation, and what it takes to strive in such a fast-paced, ever-evolving world. So sit back, relax, and join us as we delve into the world of Julian Schlossberg, his successes, his challenges, and the indelible mark that he leaves on the industry so far to date. Now, when Harvey was finished introducing Julian, here was Julian's response. I didn't realize I did so much. I should lay down and rest.
That's exactly right. I was sitting there thinking I could take a nap now.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah, no wonder I feel so tired.
I'm exhausted myself just reading it.
You had my deepest sympathies, Avrum.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Julian, the thing that first struck me about you, I thought about, okay, what's the best way to approach this interview? And what fascinates me is humankind, our behavior, our ability to do extremely well in life and sometimes not. Now, I have noticed from your CV, it jumps out at you that you dabbled in pretty much every area of the entertainment industry. I don't know if you were a gaffer, but pretty much everything else.
No, if I was, I would have put the light on me, not the other person. No.
So
the truth
do you
is,
qualify yourself? Do you qualify yourself as a Type A person?
Well, I would think so, but it was not by accident. My feeling was, and still is, that if you're not a professional, if you're not a CPA or a lawyer or a doctor or a dentist, whatever you go, whatever field you're going to go into, you should really study it, not just the aspect of what you're doing, but it. And so I determined that if I was going to go into show business, I was going to learn everything I could learn about every area. I started in network television. I wanted to learn about local television and syndication. And then I was able to go into traveling the United States, selling motion pictures to television stations. And then after that, I became a theater buyer, buying motion pictures for theaters. And after that, I became vice president in charge of production at Paramount from the East Coast point of view, not the West Coast. Yes. And then I opened my own company where I produced and directed and distributed and had theaters and did all aspects. And then I had a record company. So this is one of the reasons I'm getting tired again, Avrum. Here we go. This is my laundry list, it sounds like. But to answer your question, the truth is I wanted to learn all aspects of show business because I thought that knowledge is power. Knowledge can be power. And I wanted to have some power in the industry.
It's incredible. You even represented some talent, like you represented Jackie Mason.
I did. I can't believe it, but I did.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
That's right. I did. And he was his family were cantors and rabbis. He was the only one kind of that went astray, so to speak. Extremely intelligent man. One of the few comics that I ever met that wrote his own material. He didn't have writers. By and large, he wrote everything. And he was a great observer of the human being and how we operate. Yes, I enjoyed my time with him, but I had to leave, and it's a long story. And if anybody wants to hear it, let them buy my book.
well, I mean, in a nutshell, you got him a gig up in the mountains, right? In New York, the mountains, and he didn't take it.
Well, that's right. Well, okay, Avrum, it looks like I'm going to not sell a book, but here we go.
No, we'll sell your book. We'll sell your book.
No, I'm just kidding. I was running the Walter Reed Theaters as far as film buying was concerned. And a friend of mine said, Jackie Mason's made a movie, but no one wants to play it. I said, well, I'm sure it's not very good. He said, well, would you look at it? I said, sure, I'll look at it. And I looked at it, and it was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. It was called The Stoolie, Stoolie. And I looked at it, and I met Jackie, and I got it opened in a theater, and I helped him distribute it. And he was very grateful. And he said, I want you to be my manager. He said, because Ed Sullivan, I got kicked off the Ed Sullivan show, which he did. Yeah. Well, I'm going to make a long story longer.
Okay, good.
He was on the Sullivan show, and Sullivan told him 2 minutes. You got 2 minutes to wind up, but he went. So Jackie is in the middle of a story. He went like that about 2 minutes, but Sullivan decided he was saying up yours, as opposed to I'm not going to do these 2 minutes. I got to finish my story. So he decided he was an obscene comic. Now, Jackie Mason never cursed, let alone obscene. He didn't curse. I mean, when I was with him privately. So he couldn't work except in the mountains and in Florida. Those were the only two gigs he could get. And so he came to me and said, would you manage me? I said, I know nothing about being a manager. He said, but look what you've done with my movie. I said, yeah, because I was swimming in waters that I know. But now you're putting me in a totally different tank. But I'll try. And so I bumped into, boy, this is making a long story longer, Avrum. But actually, I'm listening. So, okay, it's not so bad if I can listen.
Let me grab a snack. I'll be right back.
Yeah, you could lie down and take a rest now.
I'm exhausted, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. And we only just begun. Anyhow, I bumped into an old girlfriend who had married the deputy mayor of New York City, did certainly better than I. She was right to do that. And he and his ex-partner were opening up a new nightclub in the old Toots Shore nightclub restaurant, and it was called Jimmy's. And I said, "Oh, I represent Jackie Mason. Would they like Jackie Mason to open the club?" And she said, "I don't know. I'll get back to you. It sounds great." So that was the rather fortuitous beginning. They said they would love to have Jackie Mason. We opened the Jimmy's. He was a giant hit. And I got this call from the mountains, and they said, "We want him to play in the Pines." Now, the Pines was a very, very exclusive and a good hotel in the mountains. It wasn't some dump, and there were plenty of dumps in the mountains, as I'm sure a lot of people know.
Yes.
This was a very classy hotel. So I said, "Jackie, we've got the Pines." He said, "What about Grossinger's?" Yeah. I said, "Well, we got the Pines. What about the Concord?" I said, "Listen, we got the Pines. You told me to book you anywhere I wanted to. I've done that." He said, "Well, I don't want the Pines." I said, "Well, but I don't want to manage." He said, "What do you mean? You're getting 20%. I said, "I'm getting 20%, but I don't want to do it. I can't." I said, "All I have is my reputation. I don't have a degree. I just have my reputation. And my reputation will not be sullied by reneging. I don't do that." So I left. But the great thing about Mason, and many great things about him, was that he never held it against me.
I was going to ask. Yes, I was going to ask.
I saw him years later, and he big hugs and kisses, and it was. I always liked him a lot, but I couldn't be in that position to make a deal and then have to go back and say I can't do it. So,
are you able to let go of Bruegges, of anger?
Yeah, I believe very much in the 3 words in the English language. It's let it go.
Yeah.
Yes, I can, and I have. So, I mean, obviously, it's not always. There are times that this is a rough business, show business, and there are times that people really do some dastardly things. I've had stars I've held in my arms as they wept, and then I years later couldn't get them on the phone. I mean, it's not necessarily a quid pro quo, as we say. It doesn't necessarily go back and forth. But yes, I can let it go, and I practice it as much as I can, because if we analyze why we're upset most of the time, invariably it's about our own ego. Yeah. I can't believe that he would do that to me. I can't believe that she did that. It's always that about our ego. So if we can recognize that and say, do we want to give up my power? Do I want to give up my power for this incident that this person's not calling me back after what I've done for him? Well, so I tried, yes, to answer your question that you asked right about the time I was bar mitzvahed. Yes, I do let things go.
And you know what's beautiful too is that, like me, it seems like you have rules in life. Let it go is one of them. Another beautiful one that you hold, and I do this as well. I always tell my son this. Your mother used to tell you, she used to say, "Julian, this too will pass."
That's right. That's right. And the other thing she said was, it's equally as intelligent, which was, don't judge people by what you would do yourself. And that's really interesting. Don't judge people by I can't believe that he or she, I would never do that. Well, that's not the answer. Not the answer. So yes, I think that if you're lucky enough, as I was, to have an intelligent mother, tough as nails. I mean, Bruce Lee would have been nervous around her, but there's no question that she endowed in me a lot of very fine qualities that I tried to follow.
You know what? We're going to dive into your book because there's so much to talk about there. But before we do, I'm always really, really compelled to understand a person through their parents. So we talked a little bit about your mom, and she seems like she was a lovely, lovely woman. And there was your father, Lou, right, who was a semi-professional baseball player. He could have played in the pros, but he didn't because he said there were no Jews there, right?
Well, he didn't say that. His parents said that. He was
his parents said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was 19 years old, and it was amazing. He was such an extraordinary athlete that he made the New York Yankees Triple-A team. Now,
Wow.
for those who don't know what baseball is about, the major league teams all have their farm teams where they train people to hopefully graduate to the majors. And
Yes.
there are the D, the C, the B, the A, Triple-A, and the majors. He
Yes.
made Triple-A. I mean, it's unbelievable at 19. But he had to go to Kansas City. And my grandparents said there's no Jews in baseball. They didn't know about Hank Greenberg, but okay, there was almost no Jews in baseball,
There
and there
was one.
certainly
Yeah.
weren't, many in Kansas City. So
Correct.
they forbid him to go. And in those days, I mean, he was born in 1910, so he's 19. This is 1929, the beginning of the Depression. He was listening to his parents. He wasn't going, and I don't think that man ever forgot, and I think it was the greatest mistake he ever made, that he didn't defy them and go. But that was not my dad. He wasn't that kind of man.
Did that show up?
He was one of the funniest human beings I
Was
ever
he?
met.
Was he really? He was.
And my favorite thing, Avrum, was that he used to say to me, he used to call me Julie. He'd say, "Julie, remember this. If at first you don't succeed, forget it."
Forget about it. The hell with it.
Not exactly paternal advice.
No,
but
no.
but a great sense of humor.
So he was a good man. Were they good parents?
They were wonderful parents. I was an only child. They were very devoted. They were very loving. I wanted to be initially an actor, and
Yeah.
I couldn't take the rejection because I had been so used to being the cock of the walk. You know, I'd say, I go out, I do my audition. They'd say next. I say next. I'm here. Look who's here. Yeah, we see you. Next.
And your mom, what was she like as a mom?
She was very strong, very opinionated. When she spoke, it was from the mountain. And more importantly, having been a teacher for so many years, she
Yeah.
was used to young people listening to what she had to say.
Yeah.
I, being a bit of a rebel, I guess. I mean, I wasn't running around and staying out all night, but I wasn't going to just listen. I whatever my DNA was I was going to kind of fight it a bit, even though it was an ant fighting a gorilla. she had all the power, but I still tried to stand up to her. And I remember her saying to me once, "I can't believe that you came from me." And I remember saying, "I can't believe it either."
Yeah,
You
right,
know?
right.
So, but I knew she loved me. And Avram, we've talked a little bit about parents. If you're aware that both your parents love you, you have a real head start in life. It's a real big beginning, because so many young men have a
Agreed.
father that don't let them. Well, they either have some sort of jealousy or conflict or make it difficult. My father was not that way. He was a kind, loving man. And so I had so many advantages, even though I was living in an alcove, didn't
Yes.
have my own room, didn't have a door, but I never felt I was in any way deprived. I mean, looking back, we're in a one-bedroom apartment. There's three of us, and my grandmother daily coming over. It's kind of like it's like a subway train that's crowded. But but the idea that I knew that I was loved gives you a giant head start in life.
Have you always felt loved?
Always.
Always.
Yeah, I have.
All three of your wives loved you?
Well, initially.
For the while, anyway.
I'm still friendly with all of them, so it's not like we lost touch. And more importantly, it was an interesting thing. What attracted to them was my business acumen in show business, but what became a competition was my business life in show business.
Yes.
In other words, they felt they were not probably getting enough attention, and they may have been right. They may have been right, because I was very, very. I wanted to make it. whatever making it meant in my head. The funny thing about, we know the Catholic Church will tell you, give me the kid for the first 6, 7 years and he's mine forever. In my case, going under the desk with the threat of Russia's atomic bomb or hydrogen bomb coming later, having to go under the desk so scarred me that all I wanted to do was live till 60 years old. That was my only goal, because I was so convinced that I could lose my life at a young age. So it's interesting, these things that spur you on. And the idea that I could possibly die with I mean, of course, the idea that you're under a desk versus the bomb, I don't think you're really being protected that greatly.
No,
but
it's a mental thing. It's a mental thing.
Of course. I got to know this wonderful politician who was very controversial named Bella Abzug. And she was very big in politics in America in the 60s and 70s. And when I told her this story, she said, I went to the school and I told them my kids are not going under the desk.
Really? She said that?
Yeah. And I thought, wow. I thought my mom was tough. My mom would have definitely lost 2 out of 3 falls to Bella Abzug. No question.
I just interviewed a lovely woman from Sfat in Israel. Her name is Shana. Have you ever been in Israel?
I have not. No.
Are you going to go?
I don't think so.
No.
I have.
Okay.
I'm very proud of being of the Jewish persuasion. I'm quite pleased about the culture, but
Yes.
I've never been involved in the religion. The day after I was bar mitzvahed was the last time that I was in temple, except if it was a friend of mine's kid being bar mitzvahed. But
Right.
Because I felt if I wanted to pray, I'd pray in English, and if I wanted to pray, I'd pray in my home. I wouldn't have to go to a temple, and I wouldn't have to talk a language that I don't know. In fact, Avrum, to give you a little bit of a laugh, I think, I couldn't master Hebrew, so the rabbi sat down and wrote out Baruch, BAW-ROOKTH, Baruch. That's how I learned my Haftorah.
There, I just put a picture up of Barack Obama. There you go, like Baruch, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to tell you about Shana. Shana lives in Sfat. It's a mystical town, a mystical city where all the great mystics lived and wrote. And she set about raising money for 50 bomb shelters for little kids because the schools didn't have bomb shelter. And the way she described it was somewhat similar to you. She said what would happen is a siren would go off and the little kids would be told to go outside because there was no bomb shelter, to lie down on the ground. We're talking about 3 and 4 year olds, and to cover their head. And she said, try it and telling a 3 or 4 year old for 10 minutes to lie on the ground and cover your head. They're not going to do it. So it reminded me of your
not
story.
only that, what the scar tissue is afterwards is something that they don't know. And I don't know from now. I have friends who were not affected by it. Yes. I mean, I still have friends from the 1st and 2nd grade, and and that's that's a good 75 years ago or more. But I asked them, weren't you affected? No, and I don't even remember. We went under the desk. I said, you don't remember going under the desk, But so I think it's so often, Avrum, how it affects you as a person, and everyone was different. So yes, that affected me greatly. And the interesting thing is that once I hit 60, which is 23 years ago, once I hit 60, I had no fear of death. And I have no fear of death now.
You don't?
But up until then, I was saying, I'm never going to make it to 60.
Yeah.
So
how old do you feel in your head?
So, I'm so sorry.
How old do you feel in your head? In your head, how old are you?
Maybe in the 40s.
Yeah,
maybe,
really, huh?
maybe. Yeah. Maybe I'm being too old in the 40s. Maybe it's the 30s.
Maybe it's younger than that.
Of course, the problem is that I may feel that in my head, but when I'm in a deep sitting in a deep couch, I have to
Yes.
move my tuchus to the edge to get up. I never had to do that before.
I hear you. I hear you. And I'm waking up 3-4 times to go pee every night now. My God.
Oh,
So
yeah, well,
you're not afraid. You're not afraid of dying.
not at all.
Do you
None.
believe in the afterlife?
I believe in the potential of the afterlife. I don't believe in the afterlife, but I don't not believe in the afterlife. It's how I feel about God. I'm definitely not an atheist, but I'm certainly not a devout believer. I
Mhm.
believe, I guess, that I'm confused. If I met my maker, I say, you confused me. I just didn't get it. Rape, pestilence, all these things. But you had a plan. It went over my head.
But do you ever pray?
Agnostic, an agnostic.
Agnostic. Do you ever pray? Have you prayed to God?
No,
You have not.
no. What I've done is, and maybe this is my way, and oh God, this is going to sound so self-serving, but why not? Um, every night I go to sleep and say, who did I help today?
Yeah, you say that.
Yeah. And that's my prayer. Who did I help today? Oh, um, oh, self-serving. Shut him up already.
No, you know what I like about that? Shut up. Julian, you know what I like about that? By the way, you have a little bit of Groucho Marx in you, your humor.
Very little.
Do you know Steve Stellaire?
No.
He's an
No.
author, and he spent 3 years living with Groucho. I just interviewed him. Oh my gosh, fascinating stories.
Yeah.
But why I like you tell me that about lying down in bed and saying who did I help? I like it for 2 reasons. Number one, I'm very much of developing rules for myself. Because I'm a little bit ADHD. I'm a little bit out there in my thinking, not that structured, I don't think. So I have to develop rules in order to understand how to live better. And the other thing too is your secrets, if you will, lying in bed and saying, okay, who did I help today? That speaks to the idea that at the core of your soul is the drive to make other people better, to make the world better. And when people hear that, Julian, they really, really benefit from it.
Well, I'm glad, but it's both unselfish and selfish. It's obviously the unselfish. We know the selfish part is I want to be able to help. I want to be able to be liked. I like people, and I want to try to help who I can when I can. On the other hand, you have to be careful because there are some who are so needy that you could end up losing your own life. I don't mean physically that you would die, just that they're on the phone or in your home or on your doorstep, So you have to balance that as well.
You know what I'm really interested in about you as well, having read so much about your life and your involvement in the entertainment industry and in the world, and it's very clear when you read between the lines when it comes to Julian Schlossberg that yes, it's the idea of, like in Hebrew, in the Torah, we say, you should love your neighbor like you love yourself. It seems to be the core of who you are. And then I looked at who your friends are. And one of them is Elaine May. And I figured I'm going to watch some videos to see what Elaine's like. She seems like she's an actress. She's a writer. She's a director, producer. And she seems like a lovely human being.
She's the finest person around, except for my wife and my other sister, Marlo Thomas. Those are my two sisters, Elaine and Marlo. Elaine is an only child. Marlo has 2 siblings, but they became my sisters. And for 40, 50 years, we've been dear friends, and they matter a great deal to me. Elaine is extraordinary. She's beyond brilliant. She is called a genius, and that word is bantied around so loosely. I've met very few geniuses, but she's one of them. And her ex-partner, because they broke up but not as friends, was Mike Nichols, and he was another genius. There are very few that I've met geniuses. I think Woody Allen, who I've worked with a lot, is a genius, but there aren't too many. There are just not too many, despite the word being bantied around rather liberally.
Woody Allen said in an interview that he doesn't read books.
He said in the interview with me.
Yeah, he doesn't read books.
Yeah. That's what he says, but there's something you can't quote all the people he quotes in his books. You can't rake Midnight in Paris and talk about Hemingway and Fitzgerald and
Yes.
all the people he mentions,
Good
Gertrude
point.
Stein, and not have read books. So let's just say that that's a little liberal reaction.
Yeah, good point. Good point, Julian.
Yeah,
How are you with geniuses? Are you good with them? Do you hold your
love them.
own?
I love them. I don't know
What do
if I
you
hold
love?
my
What do you
own.
love?
What do I?
Like when I'm with geniuses, I feel very almost scared because I'm not a genius, and I want to stay up with them. I want to understand what they're saying. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and I don't know. I don't feel that way. I know clearly I'm not in their league in certain areas, but then again, they're not in my league in other areas. One
Yeah.
of the many things my wife taught me was that there's a lot of different kinds of intelligence. I came into the world with my mother being a teacher, that you're either smart or you're not smart. Well, that was really dumb
Yeah.
because there are a lot of other intelligent things besides book learning. And some of the smartest people I know never went to college, including Elaine. Elaine audited at the University of Chicago, but she didn't care about a degree. She went to some classes to learn, but that was it. And an old dear girlfriend of mine never went to school, and she's probably the most educated person I know, because what both of those women had in common, besides not having a degree, is that they're well-read. And there is no question that well-read people can be the most intelligent. It doesn't have to be going to school and have to regurgitate what a teacher's telling you to get a high mark. No, it's much better to be self-educated by reading, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yet you have lectured at UCLA and many other colleges and universities, right? So you have a sense
I
of how to
love
deal with that.
I love it. I love lecturing, and I love trying to pass on some intelligence if I can. I had a funny experience at UCLA years ago where um, I was introduced, and it was about 200 people. It was a pretty big class, and some of them were slouching, some of them were looking at their iPhone, and I said, "Listen, before I begin, I'm only interested in an audience that's listening to me." I said, because you want to be in show business, I'm in it. You're nobody. You're zero. I said, and you can learn today. But if you're going to sit on your ass and keep looking at other things and yawn, I don't want to look at you. I don't want to see you. So right now, please get up and get out of here.
Whoa.
And I would say a good 20 people got up and left.
Whoa.
And but I still had 180, so I was okay. I did the math quickly. And the fact is, at the end of the school year, my friend, wonderful man named Tom Sherrick, a professor there, called me laughing his head off. I'm in New York, and he said, "You're not going to believe what happened." I said, "What?" He said, "Remember all those months ago when you came and you told those kids to get up and get out and stuff?" He said, "We had the biggest names here, studio heads, major stars. They voted you the best lecture that they had."
Did they? They did,
And
eh?
only, Avrum, it wasn't because of the content of the lecture. It
Yeah.
was the idea that I said, "Get the hell out of here if you don't
You
want to
had,
listen." And
yeah,
I
you
guess
had kahunas.
they like that. That's what they voted on. It's so funny about compliments and things that you get these backhanded compliments. My first book, Try Not to Hold It Against Me, A Producer's Life, I had these wonderful reviews, but the consistency was the best thing about his book, not about my writing, my stories, my intelligence, nothing. They're short chapters. That was the qualification. He writes short chapters. We love the book, you know.
Oh, I know,
golly.
I know. It's very. You're right. You make a really good point about how people respond to things, and you tell a story about how you were getting you wanted Burt Reynolds to come to New York and be in theater.
Yes.
Sly Fox, is it called?
Yes, Sly Fox.
Yeah,
Which, by the
and
way,
you,
you'd be interested to know was a takeoff on Valpone. Ben
Oh, was it?
Johnson's Valpone. Larry Gelbart just took that story about greed and
Yes.
translated up to Sly Fox. Yes. Anyhow, I'm
I
sorry I interrupted.
no, it's okay. I love when that happens. There's a great takeoff of Cyrano de Bergerac with Steve, the great comic.
Steve
What's his name?
Martin. Steve
They're
Martin.
brilliant,
Yeah,
really well done
right.
film. But you try to get Burt Reynolds to come and be in this theater, and you left him a really funny message.
Yeah.
Tell him what was the message. He liked it too, right?
Yeah, he did very much. I said, hi, Bert. You don't know me. I'm a New York City producer, but try not to hold it against me.
Right. It's a very interesting message to leave, Julian.
Well, Avram, the producer's image in show business is a big fat guy with a big cigar running after girls and a liar, a thief, and a cheat. Well, there are some people like that. It's not like it's a total, but I mean, the majority of producing, it's a very hard thing to do. And I'm not patting myself on the head because there's so many producers who are much more successful than I've been. But it is a difficult thing because you have to find the property. Then you have to find the writer. Then you have to find the director. Then you have to cast it. Then you have to get involved in the advertising, the marketing, the show. It's a never-ending job that starts and can go on literally for years.
Yeah.
So you got to have the hide of a rhino, and I think I do.
Oh, do you? Are you tough on the outside?
I can be very strong. I'd rather say strong than tough, only because the tough has a connotation that I'd rather not feel about myself. What I would say is this. I was working with a major star, and I took her to dinner. She was giving the crew and my director a lot of trouble. And I said to her, "You're making a mistake with me. You're mistaking my kindness for weakness." I said, "I'll wipe the floor with you if you keep this up."
You
I
said
did.
that?
Yeah, I did. Oh, absolutely. I said, you're making a huge mistake. Anyhow, I fired her, eventually fired her, because for a couple of days, I thought everybody was patting me on the shoulders. Oh, you did it. You're the one who did it. And about the third day, she pulled something horrendous, and I just fired her ass at that point. So I've only fired 2 people in my whole career, and I've done over, as you pointed out, over 60 productions. Because I'd rather, I want to take the high road in life. I don't want to take the low road. I don't want to go there. But if I have to, I'll go there. And that's the point.
And if you put out bad energy, will you apologize?
Oh my God. I'll grovel.
Yeah.
I'll do way more than apologize. But but it won't be about bad energy, because I don't think I do that. But it could be about something I did either inadvertently or I misjudged something, and then I'll say I'm so sorry about it. Yeah. And the reason I'm finally married for 31 years to my third and final wife is I'm willing to go and say, I'm so sorry. I did this and it's my fault. Yeah. So yes, I am more than willing.
Does Meryl
She doesn't. There's no reason to. I've never met any. I never met any human being like my wife. I believe everyone, Avrum, has what I would label a shadow side. There's a side we're not too proud of, not too happy. My wife doesn't have it. She's just the most lovely, kind person you want to see. So without sounding like as my mother would call me, a Pollyanna, the answer is that no, she never has to apologize, because she's never done anything in 31 years that I'm upset about.
I want to go back to a question that I started with, which was how you choose your friends. And I want to include your wife in this, because when you speak about Elaine May, again, she just appears on screen as though she's such a beautiful human being. I think everybody looks at Marlo and says, that girl, that's her. Like, she's a kind, loving human, and she was married to Phil Donahue, also a very empathetic human being. And now you have your wife. So did you always choose people well?
I've been fooled. I can't say that I've always, would be nice to say I've never made a mistake in the area of friendship, but no, I certainly have been hurt by people, and I'm afraid to say I'm sure that I've hurt people, but it would be inadvertently. but
Yes.
I'm sure I've disappointed some, and who knows? I'm not really sure about that, but I'm just, I believe in loyalty. I think loyalty is one of the most important things you can have, especially in friendship. And that's why I think I've been able to keep friends as long as I have. As I said earlier, I literally have friends for 70, 75 years. I have a whole bunch of college friends. We get together all the time. No, I've kept my friendships with the people I hope were people I wanted to stay with, throughout
Absolutely.
my life. One of the very difficult things for me to adjust to in show business is that you can do a movie or a play or a television show with someone, and you can eat, sleep, drink, spend all that time with them over a period of a few months or even a year, and then never hear from them again.
Yes. Yes.
It's the
Yes.
nature of show business. Now, it may be the nature of the world and human beings, but it's much more prevalent in show business than anywhere else, because the actor's life is one of a gypsy. They are gypsies, and they can be with you one day, and then they're shooting a movie in Indonesia for 3 months. So the friendship sometimes dissipates, and in some cases, I found that hurtful for me, because I wanted it to go on, and it wasn't that they were mad at me, but obviously that it wasn't important enough.
So I was just interviewing Dan Gordon, who's a writer, and he's made films, and he worked with Sly Stallone on Rambo and all this stuff. And he was telling me all these names of individuals who he's worked with, and I'm somewhat starstruck, and I think you are a little bit too. And
Well,
I said, wow,
I was. I'm not any longer, but I was.
not anymore. But
No,
he told
no.
me, Dan said, I said, Dan, are you friends with these people? He goes, no, it doesn't work like that, Avram. He
Yeah.
goes, what have you work with them? And you know something, Julian, before Hanukkah, I sent out a letter to all the people who were on my show in this past year. And I said, thank you so much. I'm very grateful that you were a guest and you took time to do that. And I don't know, I did a lot of shows, so I sent out a lot of emails. And Merry Christmas, have a happy holiday season. You know who I heard back from? Ferry, you might find this interesting. You like human nature, I can see. I heard back from the single guys, but not
Yeah.
the other people. The single guys.
Right. Well, I was on the air in New York for 9 years. I
Yeah.
was on WMCA and then WOR. I was on from 8 to midnight. So I had
Yes.
4-hour show in prime time.
That's a
I
lot.
had the number that I had Bob Hope, George Burns, Betty Davis, John
Yeah.
Huston. I had the biggest name in show business. All of those people, only 2 people out of the literally thousands that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
interviewed wrote me a note of thanks.
Did they? Did they?
And it was a gossip columnist named Rona Barrett, and
Sure, Rona.
a lovely actress named Jan Sterling, who was married to Paul Douglas. But that was it. Now, I will say many of them were very complimentary on the air. They just said, "This is great. You're so knowledgeable." Blah blah blah. Okay, and that was nice. But you better not look for that, Avram. That I can promise you. It's that kind of anybody who works that way is an endangered species.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I'm starting to get it even more. I was feeling when I started to interview stars, more so really high profile people, authors and individuals working in Hollywood and making films and all this. I thought at the end of it, honestly, Julian, I thought, I see we're going to be friends. That never happened. Never
Doesn't
happened.
happen. No. Dan Gordon and I work together.
Nice
He's
guy.
often he, as you know, goes to Israel a lot,
He
and
does.
is in the reserve and an officer. But he and I did the Terms of Endearment together, based
Right.
on the movie. He wrote
Right.
He wrote the play. I produced the play, and Molly Ringwald starred in the play. Molly Ringwald, who was a teen actress,
Yeah.
became so famous, played the mother. That's how the business is. She played the Shirley MacLaine role in the play because she was no longer the kid from
Well,
those
that's not
movies.
the only film where that happened. You said you were making a film that you just couldn't sell it. It was with Mia Farrow, and she started off
Absolutely.
as a daughter, and by the end of it, she was the mom.
That was Widow's Peak, and that's
Right.
exactly what happened. Boy,
Right.
you did read the book, so
Yeah.
you're the one. You're the one who read the book.
Me and my mom.
You and your mom. Oh, wow. I doubled my audience. Fantastic.
Julian,
Yeah.
I know you would go to like Barbara Streisand's birthday party, Liza Minnelli. Sitting here in Toronto at Shepherd and Bathurst, kind of a quaint little intersection, not too busy, not too dangerous. I'm in awe of these people you hung out with. Should I be?
No, but I understand it.
Yeah.
There was a very famous comedian in America in early television named Milton Berle.
Yes.
And Milton Berle would get up he did it. He was Mr. Television. Not only was he on Tuesday nights, but not only that, but restaurants closed, movie theaters closed. There was no point in staying open because everybody was watching Milton Berle. It was the most, because of early television. And he would do this when the applause came. He would hold up one hand to stop, and he would go like this with the other hand.
Yeah.
So to answer your question about the awe, no, I'm not, but at times I am, because when I met Cary Grant, I was speechless because I was at a Academy Award party, and I was at a table of 8 people. And to my left was Mia Farrow, and to my right was Ginger Rogers. And I was talking to Mia Farrow when Ginger was tapping me on the shoulder. I don't know what she wanted. I didn't want to be rude. I turned around and she said, "I'd like you to meet," and down comes Cary Grant's head.
Yes.
Like Jackie Gleason in The Honeymooners, I go, bah, 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 bah. I can't talk. I can't believe it. Now, if someone had told me, Cary Grant's at the party, or
It would be different.
or if I saw him coming over to the table. But can you imagine? You're talking to Mia, you turn around, Ginger wants to tell you something, and Cary goes, "How are you?" What? So yes, at that point, I was beyond awe. I was overawed.
What I couldn't figure out about that story was that Kojak was sitting in that table. What was his real name?
No,
Kojak.
Yul Brynner was there.
Oh, was it Yul Brynner?
Yeah, Telly Savalas wasn't. Yul Brynner was looking at me, Avrum, like I was some sort of horrible vermin that had sat down. I have no idea.
Why? Why is that?
I cannot tell you. I don't know. It's one thing if you get to, I once said to a director, people generally dislike me after they get to know me, and so that's what happened with Brenner. I didn't say a word to him. He was looking at me with such anger and disdain. I have no idea why. All I could think of was I truly was the only person at that table that he never heard of. And that could have been an annoyance to him, that some interloper is hanging out with him and Mia and Ginger and who I guess
I think he said you were the only guy at the table that you never heard of.
That's right.
About yourself, right?
That's right.
So tell me, when you leave a dinner like that, you were just sitting next to Mia Farrow, and I actually spent some time with Mia Farrow. She did a gala for my nonprofit. It's a Jewish humanitarian, lovely human being. She did a lot of activism in Darfur. And and the other side is Ginger Rogers. Will you go home and tell a friend or a loved one you won't believe who I was sitting with tonight, or no?
Not at that point. When in the early days of my career, oh my God, yes. Oh, absolutely. When I was able to literally stand, I don't know, 10, 15 feet away from Sinatra and next to a television camera as he sang songs and taped a show, and I was that close to Sinatra, I was stopping people on the street,
Right.
strangers. But after a while, it's like everything else. It's not that you're inured to it. I mean, you still are excited or pleased to meet someone, but it's not the same as the initial time, as you I'm sure have found out. Meeting Mia when you met her was certainly exciting, but not as much. It would have been much more 10 years before,
Yes.
So,
well, but yet, I think you were working with Van Johnson, right?
I did. I directed Van Johnson, and I loved working with him. He was a wonderful fellow, a big painter. He used to paint incredible canvases.
Did he?
Think Guernica,
Yes.
Picasso's Guernica, huge paintings, and he sold them for lots of money. I directed him, and in a show I produced and directed called Going Hollywood, The War Years, and we went out to dinner to celebrate, and we came out, and these two older ladies ran up and said, "Oh my God, it's you!" And he said, "Yes, it is, Van Heflin."
But
Okay.
what you said was that you couldn't believe when you first met him, like he was a number one star in Hollywood in his
The, num-
time, wasn't he?
the number one box office star in the world,
In the world.
because he most of the major actors were in combat, or at least going overseas or working with
Yeah.
the USO. He
Yeah.
had a plate in his head. He had been in a terrible car accident, and so he had this plate in his head, so he couldn't serve if he wanted to. So he was available when all these other people were not. And also he was a good actor. He was terrific in Battleground and 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. I mean, he was in the Good Old Summertime. He was in a lot of movies, and he was a very interesting character, I'll say.
Is it sad to a lot of these stars? Like I remember watching a Dick Van Dyke show or one of the series when I was a kid, and there would be a walk on by a huge Hollywood star or who was a huge Hollywood star. And I always felt really sad for them. Like I feel for Wayne Gretzky after he stopped playing hockey. Is it sad? Should one be sad for them?
I think it is a lot of time. It's a very heady wine to have stardom put upon you. And if you haven't had any kind of foundation, it becomes difficult to kind of work in those waters. What happens is this: there is so much rejection and
Yeah.
lying to and callbacks to actors that when they finally make it, they're very resentful. They're damaged goods, as I've described them on other shows as well. So I don't in any way condone their behavior, but what we say in America in traffic court, guilty with an explanation.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say. So often it's very sad to see people who were at huge heights who are now, quote, a has-been. Now, fortunately, some people can handle it. Most cannot. And what's also difficult is to have everybody telling you how good you are when you know damn well you're not that good.
Yeah.
And you're expecting. I remember Mike Nichols was known as the golden boy. They kept saying he's the golden boy. His first play, Barefoot in the Park, he wins the Tony. The second play, Odd Couple, he wins the Tony. And then he goes out to Hollywood. He makes Virginia Woolf and The Graduate. And I remember him saying, I have to fail. I want to fail. I got to get this out of the way because this is nonsense. I can't be kept. I don't like this. And I could understand what he meant. You don't want to be told that you're infallible when you know damn well you're not.
What was your biggest failure?
Mike's?
Yours.
Mine?
Your biggest failure, yeah.
How dare you, Avrum?
I know. I figure I'd take a leap here.
You did. You put. I'm on the ropes right now.
A rope a dope. Yeah, here I am.
Yeah. Well, I need
Ali.
Muhammad Ali. I need him. That was my biggest failure. I mean, I've had failures. There's no question. I don't know. It's certainly not my biggest failure, but it was a failure. Elaine May wrote a very funny play, comedy. I asked Alan Arkin to direct it. A lot of people don't realize Alan Arkin was the original director of The Sunshine Boys on
Great
Broadway.
Great.
And no, most people don't know, but he directed other things. He was a talented director besides that incredible actor. And I asked him to direct it. And then I bumped into, with Mike Nichols, we were going to see a play together. And I bumped into Matthew Broderick, who I did not know, but Matthew knew Mike. And I told him, Matthew, I have a play I want to send you. He said, really? I said, yeah. We're in the lobby of a theater going to see Dame Edna. And he gave me his address, and by the way, after we became friends, and I really like Matthew, he's a very private person. The only way I got his address was that I was with Mike Nichols. That was the only reason I got it.
Yeah.
I mean, I sent it to him and he did it. And then I got to Parker Posey and she did it. So I had Alan Arkin, Elaine May, Matthew Broderick, Parker Posey, and a wonderful cast of Joyce Van Patten and Jerry Adler, a lot of well-known actors. And I really thought we had something, and it was not successful. So that was a disappointment. I'll have to call you back one day and tell you what the biggest one was.
Yeah, or give me a list. I'm open to lists.
Oh, list that there's definitely a list. There's definitely a list, but I don't know. You know, it's funny. Maybe this is in a way, Dr. Avrum. Yes, Dr. Avrum. Maybe in a way, this kind of confirms the fact that I have not held on to that. I don't think about failure. I've had it certainly, but I don't dwell on it. And maybe that's a secret of sort that helps.
Right. And I will tell you something. Have you been in therapy?
No, only once when I couldn't leave my second wife. But that lasted very short It was a very short session. But no, I was never in therapy.
Because you're like a person who's gone through therapy. You're a very joyful person. At first blush, you seem very joyful, and you're extraordinarily positive, right?
Yes, I am a joyful person. I am a positive person. Yes, I am. It drove my mother crazy.
Did it?
Yeah.
She made her nuts.
As I said earlier, you're a Pollyanna.
I like the way you do that. It's a Pollyanna.
Yeah.
But do we have a little bit more time, Julian? We have a little more time?
Oh, sure.
Good.
After all, Avrum, we're talking about me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I want to.
Who could ask for anything more?
I'd like to talk about myself for the next hour, if you don't mind.
Go. Well, okay, let's talk about that tough father of yours. Your rabbi father. That's not an easy way to grow up.
He was. Ask me a question about my dad. Ask me one question.
What was the most difficult aspect of being his son?
He didn't know how to love me, Julian. He just didn't know how to love me. He was a rabbi, and he was a brilliant rabbi. He was much beloved by his congregation, and my sisters adored him. I had 4 sisters. One's passed away. And he just didn't, for some reason, know how to embrace me as his son, as a person. And that was really, really difficult because I was craving his love. Like when you talk about your parents' love to you and how beautiful it was and how wholesome and how full it was. Do you have any idea what a blessing that is? What a huge blessing that is?
As I told you, I had every reason to have some success with that foundation.
Yeah.
But was he able to love your mom and sisters?
I'm not sure about my mom. That jury's still out. Remember, my dad was born in 1928. My mother was born in 1930. That was a generation where it was sort of like fathers weren't great with their sons. And you alluded to that before, and I think you're crack on when you said that. I think you're dead on. But they were much better with the girls. And some of it was sort of the father knows best thing. There were roles that everybody had. Men liked being adored by the female, no matter who they were. But with me, I've been told, because I've been in therapy, I've been told that I was a reflection of my father, and he wasn't crazy about himself. Hence, he had a hard time with me.
Well, what was the most positive aspect of your relationship with your dad? Was there anything that you say, well, despite all that, there was this?
Yeah, Julian, my father was a brilliant rabbi, a brilliant leader. We had people living in our home, sometimes for a day, sometimes for a week, sometimes for a year or two. He would bring people home who many would consider stray dogs. I would wake up and I would see lying on the couch Shlomo Carlebach. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
He was the greatest folk rock singer in the Jewish world, the religious world. Meyer Kahane, who had a very...
Well, here I know. Yes.
He was in our house because my dad did a show with him in Kitchener at the university. There would be stars in our home. There would be people who were living with us who we would take care of. What I learned from my father, God bless his soul, what I learned from my mother is the ability to empathize, Julian. So when you're on the show with me, I cut right to the essence of your your core, your personality. I can see you very, very quickly. Whether I'm reading you completely correctly or not, I'm sure that I'm not, but I see people really well. And people were made to feel visible in our home. I wasn't, but they were.
Well, you have cut to whatever essence I do have. There's no question about that. But as I said to my wife, she said, "How come you're doing the show?" And I said, "Avram is an old soul.
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
talking to an old soul, and I know that. I know it. I know it instinctively,
Thank you.
even before we sat down when I watched you with Harvey Brownstone. So that interested me to be with someone who perhaps, for all I know, was in my life many years ago.
Well, we were probably like hunters or something, huh?
We could be. We could have
Would you
been.
hunt? Would you ever
Well,
hunt? Would you ever do that?
no, only when I was single.
You did hunt. But I have to tell you something, Julian. Firstly, thank you for asking me those questions. And this does touch on a question that I will ask in a second about your interviewing skills. But we have a mutual friend. Her name is PT, and she's a
Yes.
lovely human being, and she's starting up her podcast. And you did an interview with her, and I have to ask myself, why is Julian doing an interview with PT? Why is he doing an interview with me? And the conclusion that I drew was that you want to help. You want to help us.
Well, it's true, but again, it's not unselfish. It's also selfish. I'm getting my name out to the
Yeah,
public
you
that
are.
doesn't know me. So it's not, I would like to pat myself on the head and say, oh, yes, I'm doing it to help the world. I'm doing it to help, but I'm also doing it to help myself.
I hear you, but all the list of people whom you have worked with, the Mel Brooks of the world, the Elaine Mays, I mean, the list is huge. Don't you simply have to phone up a star, either from then or from now, and say, listen, I really want to interview on my radio show or my
Well,
podcast?
I've just done that, and that's how I've gotten Woody Allen and Matthew Broderick
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Alan Alda and so many other people. Uh, we just did an interview with Richard Thomas, John Boy from the Waltons,
Oh,
and
boy.
yeah, and this week is Peter Gallagher. Next week is Christine Baranski. So it's a lot of names. I even did Roseanne Barr, Alec Baldwin. I mean, yes, I can basically call up, and I may have to do a little sniveling and groveling, but basically, I get them to do the show.
For
Yeah,
sure. We all snivel and grovel at some point. It's just like,
of course. Why not?
but you,
But
you said you
here's the
said
thing
you,
that I'm sorry. Go ahead, Avram. You go.
you said you in an interview, you said I'm a good interviewer. And then you commented, I think it was the Antoinette, and so are you. But what I took away from that is your recognition that you are a good interviewer. And I want to ask you, what makes you a good interviewer?
I care about the person I'm interviewing. I know about the person I'm interviewing. I've researched the person I'm interviewing. I've perhaps spent hours with that person, depending who it is. But I'm a people person. I like people. I mean, I don't like some of their behavior, but then again, I don't like some of my behavior. So it's all part of it. But what makes a good interviewer is to listen, to hear what they say. I've watched people on television say to someone, so tell me a little bit about your sister. Well, yeah, she committed suicide. Well, tell me about your mother. What? She committed suicide, and you're going to your next question? I mean,
Yes.
that's not an interview. That's just a bunch of questions.
Yes.
My goal, and I've interviewed literally thousands of people, my goal is simply to have a conversation, not an interview. And that's what you just did. That's what your goal is. You may not know it as a goal, but that's what you've done. We haven't sat here and felt like I never felt I was being interviewed. A give or take when you said, what's the biggest failure you had? But besides
Asshole.
that,
Yeah. Yeah, that's how
besides
you
that,
remember me. That Avram guy. Yeah, don't go
no, no,
there. I
no.
know.
Here's a good thing about the name Avram. You don't
Yeah.
forget that name. It's not like you're, oh yeah, I just spoke to an Avram. Come on, that's not it. Even Julian is rather unusual, as you know.
I have a friend, Julian and Julius, and we call him Julie as well, like your father used to call you.
Yes, yeah. And well, if I'm downtown in New York and someone yells Julie, I know it's the past. I know
Yeah.
it's from my school. It's not
Yes.
anybody from show business, most likely, because they all know me as, well, perhaps a pain in the ass.
Well, yeah. Are you like you said before? That some of your own behavior you don't like. Well, like what? What don't you like about your own behavior?
Well, I thank God with Marin, my wife, I got rid of this horrible temper that I had. I had a
You
bad
right? You
temper.
were saying, yeah,
Yeah, and I always liken that to the wonderful parable Androcles and the lion.
mhm,
I had the thorn in my paw, and Marin came along and took that thorn out. But like
beautiful.
anybody who's an alcoholic or someone who's been addicted, you never think, oh, it's gone. I'll never get angry again. That's nonsense. It's still there. The rage, the anger that I had, I know is still there. Thank God it's embers and not fire. Thank God it's just, I hope, suppressed, but it's still there. And once you know you have it, and once somebody's helped you get rid of it, in quotes, because you never get rid of it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
uh, I work on that. I work on, when my phones don't work, I used to take the phone and take it and smash it to bits. And now I say, oh, my phone's not working again.
Where do you think your rage came from?
Probably from my mom, probably from the idea that, again, I was told what to do and I didn't want to do a lot of what I was told to do. So I was helpless. And I think, you turn, I mean, real depression to me is anger turned inward,
Yes.
that you can't get rid of it. I never had that, thank God, but I did feel that I was being told to do that. And now the great thing about my life, unlike other people, even though I had that anger, I also had that love. So
Yeah.
it was a strange mixture, a strange combination, but one that at the end of my mom's life, who lived to almost 100, almost 99 actually, she finally did recognize that I had done some pretty good work in the world, but it took a long time, long time.
Remember,
My father recognized it as soon as I was a year old. To him, I was everything.
yes,
A
yes,
very unusual father, that's for sure.
yes.
Yeah.
And are your sisters complimentary to you as well, Marlo? And yeah, are they complimentary to you?
Well, I mean, we have, as any siblings have, we have our disagreements and
Yeah.
our fun together. But I adore them, and I know they adore me. And on the wedding license, my two witnesses are my two sisters.
That's
They
nice.
they signed they signed it, and when I said I do, Marlo yelled, "That's the best thing you've ever done." So
Sometimes when you're doing an interview, Julian, you'll hear a story from your guest, and let's say about a friend or friendships in this case, and you'll feel like, geez, I really want to be a part of that. I feel like I'm missing out on something. That's how I feel about you and your friends and your
oh
wife.
well. I consider myself, Avram, a very fortunate person. I do.
Yeah.
It's not that I didn't work for it, but a lot of people work very hard and never get what they wanted. I wanted to be in show business. I wanted to do a Broadway play. I wanted to make a movie. I wanted to do a lot of things I was able to do. So I consider myself very fortunate, very blessed, and I hope that I can keep doing it. That's all. Uh,
Amen. Amen.
yeah.
Julian Schlossberg, you wrote a book, Try Not to Hold It Against Me, A Producer's Life. Much of what we said within this interview is in the book. So don't think that we're touching on it near the end of the interview. No, we've already touched on much of it. But my
Yes.
definitive question to you is, you're 83 years old, thank God. You should live to 120 like we say in Jewish. What point do you decide I'm going to write a book?
COVID. COVID was the only reason. All my life, I would be at dinner parties or I'd be holding dildy parties, and I would tell my stories. I'm a storyteller. And they would say, "You got to write a book." I say, "Yeah, right, I'll write a book." "Oh, yeah, I'll write a book one day." I had no intentions of writing a book. But when
Yeah.
COVID hit and I couldn't do any creating at all, I was just sitting home on my rear end. I thought, well, let me take a swipe at this. Let me write a chapter and see if anybody will give a damn. And then I started writing, and it's an amazing thing to write a memoir. In fact, the reason I wrote the second memoir was COVID continued, but also going on shows, people would ask me questions. I say, oh my God, I didn't talk about Raquel Welch. I didn't talk about B. Arthur. So I wrote a second book. And the second book is called my first book, Part 2.
Right. That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So I wrote more stories, and I loved going back in my time and realizing what happened and the consistencies or the inconsistencies that were occurring, and realizing that pretty much when I decided to produce something, it got produced. And that's pretty rare, because generally as a producer, you have at least 5 or 6 things going and hope that one, you throw it to the wall and one sticks. But I was able to pretty much produce almost everything I wanted to do. And that I'm very pleased about. It's much more difficult now, because the people who backed me are older than I am, which I didn't think that was possible, but they are older than I am. And either they've passed on, or their estate is now in order. They don't want to mess around with the estate by giving any money away. So yeah. It's going to be it has been very difficult for me, and will continue to be, to do what I did for many, many years without a lot of backing from these folks. So hopefully we'll figure out a way, but if not, I'll go by my 60 some odd productions and my couple of books. I'm okay about it.
So if you were, God forbid, on your deathbed tomorrow, would you look back and say, yeah, my life was good?
Yes, absolutely.
You would say that.
I would say my life, I would say that I have been a very fortunate man, that I really believe that what I wanted to do at a very, very young age. I wrote in the book, my mother forbid me to bring Variety home at 10 years old. I couldn't believe there was a newspaper that talked about show business. And she said, you can't read that anymore. I want you to be a professional. And I understood that. Not then, but I understood that certainly now. But no, I did what I wanted to do. And my God, if you know, how many people say, I wish I had. I wish I had. Yes. So if I was on my so-called DB, I don't want to say those words, deathbed, Avrum, but okay. If I was on the DB, yes, I would certainly sit back and say, did okay, kid. Did okay.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. Just a couple questions about the book itself. You were dear friends and a colleague of Elia Kazan.
Yes.
Right? Whom you basically qualify as one of the best directors ever.
Ever. He was the Spielberg and Lucas and Scorsese of his time, except unlike them, he was huge in movies and theater. The original director on Broadway of Death of a Salesman, the original director of A Streetcar Named Desire, the original director of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Sweet Bird of Youth, and it goes on in theater, winning the Academy Award for Gentleman's Agreement, winning the Academy Award for On the Waterfront, discovering Marlon Brando, Eva Marie Saint, James Dean, East of Eden. I mean, that guy was huge. And his name is always pronounced incorrectly, and he never liked that. It's Elia. Everybody says Elia, but it's Elia Kazan. And he was an extraordinary force of nature, but he also had, as we all do, these kind of things that are not so great about ourselves. He also named names during the McCarthy period. He actually named names. Now, that was certainly not something that most people thought was a very good thing to do. He had his reasons, and basically he said them publicly. And but yes, he was the first person to believe in me. And when you have someone like that believing in you, you start thinking, hey, maybe I am something. Because the idea that he gave me, it's impossible to anyone to believe this, he gave me A Face in the Crowd and Baby Doll, 2 movies he had directed. And in one of the most extraordinary things in the history of Hollywood, he made movies for Warner Brothers with the deal that 10 years after the movie was out, the film would revert to him. This was unheard of. Almost no one ever had that deal. Bob Hope had it on a couple of films, and Hitchcock had it. I think they're the only ones that I know of that had that deal with a studio. And then he gave me. He didn't say, I need money, I need this. He literally gave me those movies, and that started my career in distribution, because in the show business world, if Kazan gave me this movies, I must be somebody. Yeah. The fact that I was 0 at that point, I mean, nobody, didn't enter anyone's head. It just seemed that if Kazan gave him the movies, we ought to give him our movies. And that's how I started building a library and ended up with 500 feature films.
Yeah. Stanley Kubrick said about Elia Kazan, he said, without question, the best director we have in America, capable of performing miracles with the actors that he uses. Film author Ian Freer concludes that even if his achievements are tainted by political controversy, the dead Hollywood and actors everywhere owes him is enormous. You know what interests me about you, Julian, is that you had this friend in Elia Kazan who truly was a giving individual and generous of spirit like you, and he helped you be visible.
He did.
What I wonder about is, you could have walked away from him because of what he did during the McCarthy era, but you did not. You stayed with him as a friend. Why did you make that decision?
Well, chronologically, the time he came into my life, it was many years later.
Yes.
So it was really, it wasn't as if he was embroiled in this and then I stuck with him. I would have, even then, even though I felt what he had done was not, you see, the idea was he named names that the committee had. It wasn't as if he turned anyone in. So that was the positive part of it, if you want to call it that. But as I said to him once, because I only brought it up once with him, as I said to him, he said, they had the names. It wasn't as if I said, I know. I said, but it's what you represented. It was that you were doing it. It wasn't about the fact that they weren't getting anyone new. You weren't getting anyone in trouble. It wasn't that. It's what it represented that you. So that, anyhow, I can't take any credit for sticking with him, because to me, he was, if anything, giving to me. All I did was to try to do a good job for him. But I have a letter that I treasure from him, which put in writing what he felt I had done for him over the years. And I treasure that letter, because he did not throw out platitude. He wasn't a kudo kind of guy.
Yes.
He just wasn't. So that letter meant everything to me, and I think he knew it.
Two things, and then we'll wrap up this wonderful interview. And these are both in the books. I love the way you tell the story. The first one is, somebody asked you, an interviewer asked you, they go, Julian, everybody hates Cannes Film Festival. They hate going. It's such a pain in the neck. It's so far away. But what was your response to that? How do you feel about Cannes?
I could never. I love the Cannes Film Festival. I didn't like it. I went for 25, 36 years every year. I'm in the south of France, having the best food in the world.
In the entire world.
Going to see, and movies are all over the place. I could walk in and see all new movies, old movies. What the hell were they complaining about? Well, I know there was a lot of crowds. People were pushing a lot. But, I'm from New York City. I rode the subway. Pushing, that's like nothing to me. And the idea that there was these restaurants, for the Jewish folk who love to eat, and some of us really love to eat, you had the most incredible food. I mean, there were restaurants, the Eden Rocket, the Hotel du Cap, and T2, and Roger Verger's Moulin et Moujon. These were the finest restaurants, 3-star restaurants in Michelin, and
Yes.
I'm going to them and eating there. Are you kidding? I couldn't wait. I never understood it, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I'm right now I'm salivating just thinking about it.
Do you have a favorite dish that you would order there, or just in general?
There was a bouillabaisse at T2 that
Yes.
was a bouillabaisse like no one has ever seen. I would call it an X-rated bouillabaisse.
Nice, good description.
It was
Excellent.
unbelievable. And Roger Verger, one of the great cooks of the world, those who know about cooking, owned Moulin et Moujon. And after I was going there year after year, he became an acquaintance. And he would make me, when he knew I was coming, he would make me dishes. And my wife, the first time I took my wife to Cannes, we went there and we ate like it was just awful. It was like King Henry VIII would have apologized to us. Nobody could have eaten the way we ate. And we got back to the hotel, and in the middle of the night, we're up all night with pains, and we keep saying, we do it again. We do it again.
I know that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't believe it. But, oh, my God. But Elaine May always said, I like French food, but it's kind of wet.
It is a bit wet. You're right. Yeah. There's Nouveau French. It's a little less wet. I did a restaurant and food show with my friend Marty Gallen for 10 years. So we went to the greatest restaurants in Canada. Marty just died like 3 weeks ago. So, but a brilliant, beautiful guy. And I remember that, where chefs would make us these incredible, superlative dinners, and they would do it just for us. And you would walk out and you go, my God, I've gone to heaven,
That's right.
Oh,
it's awful. It's just awful, because
it's terrible.
Once you get hooked on that, you just want to keep going back and eat again. What I was shocked at, I went to Minneapolis and St. Paul. I traveled the country, as I said earlier, selling motion pictures to television stations. And I found in Minneapolis and St. Paul the most incredible restaurants. And every one of them at that time were named Irving's, Ben's, Charlie's. I thought, these guys, they don't even care. They're just going to put their name on it and open up a great restaurant. I wish maybe a listener will write in and say, I remember those restaurants. Yeah.
But you also said there were two places where you never met Jews. One was your short stint in the army, and the other was in rural America, I think, selling films.
That's right. Oh, my gosh, yes. And I was single at the time, and I would go out with girls, and a couple of them literally said to me, can I touch your head? And I'd say, why do you want to do that? They said, well, I want to see if you have horns. Yeah. I mean, so, yes, I experienced what I would call subtle anti-Semitism. It wasn't blatant. It was just that you knew you were not being liked for one reason only.
Yes.
For all I know, that was Yul Brynner's problem.
Maybe, but we don't want to say that. We don't know, right?
No, that's why I'm kidding.
Yeah. So the last story I want to ask.
How could the king of Siam treat me that way? Anyhow.
He was a Jew lover. We all know that. So Julian Schlossberg, tell us the story about Henry Kissinger. I'm sneezing. That's great. That's a great story. That's a great story.
I've been doing a documentary, a 14-hour documentary, I think since my bar mitzvah, for a long time, interviewing I interviewed 140 of the most famous people on the planet. Really, from President George H.W. Bush to, Henry Kissinger, as you said, Willie Mays, the great ball player, Elie Wiesel. I mean, just incredible people. The list is extraordinary. And when I interviewed Dr. Kissinger, I said, I read Dr. Kissinger that when you were in Germany during the Nazi period, you left and you came over here and you wanted to be an accountant. Well, what I really wanted to do was to make money. Oh, I said, well, okay. And we then go into a whole series of opening up China, working with Nixon, meeting Chu Enlai, Mao Zedong, meeting Kosygin in Russia, de Gaulle, and all these extraordinary people. And then he says, "Oh, wait a minute." And he sneezes, takes out a handkerchief, and he puts it to his nose and blows his nose and puts his handkerchief back. And there's a dollar bill stuck to his nose. Take that out. I want that out. I don't want that in here. I said, well, Dr. Kissinger, remember, you told us earlier you came to America to make money. You're sneezing in dollar bills. Now, honestly, Avrum, you would have thought he was davening. He held his stomach and just leaned forward and back, screaming with laughter. So I thought that was kind of funny. That was kind of an interesting thing.
So do you have that Dick Cavett about you as an interviewer a little bit? Like, not afraid to ask?
Well, I don't think so. I was never looking for a get him. Let me get him. I wanted to. No. That was never my intent. My intent was to understand where they came from. The way you did the interview with me now. You know, a guy from the Bronx. What kind of a mother? What kind of a father? That's what I'm interested in, because I'm interested in what makes the person become who they were. You're not born into success. You have to get there. You may be born wealthy, but a lot of wealthy people, as we know, became broke. We also know a lot of wealthy people who are miserably unhappy. So it's not that. I'm interested, as I said earlier, in a conversation, but I also want to know what made Avrum who he is today. Yes.
Final question.
I want more.
I just say that. I don't mean it's a final question.
Okay.
I have many more.
Okay.
This can go for hours. My son is here, and I got to take him for dinner. Otherwise, I would talk with you forever. We would do like a 5-part series.
Well, I say let's do part 2. Let's do part 2 in a couple of months.
I'd love to. As a Jew, Julian Schlossberg, why are we hated so much, the Jewish people?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I'm clearly not qualified to answer, except to answer you as best I can. But I don't consider myself an expert in that. Invariably, the Jewish people wanted education, no matter where they were. They wanted to assimilate, and they wanted to do better than the previous generation had done. And many times they excelled and did quite well. And I think that there's a certain aspect of jealousy that exists in the world, and it could be partially that. I don't know. I know one thing, though, that we're trying to evolve, all of us. All of us are not evolving, but we should be. You know, there's a great author named Matthew Arnold who wrote Dover Beach. Yes. And he said, we are here on earth to do good to others. What the others are here for, I do not know.
He's already said that's great.
Isn't that
that's a great line? Yes.
Yeah. And that's how I feel. I believe we're on earth to do good for others. I have no idea what the others are here for. I have no idea. I don't know.
So I want to give you a quick quiz, and then I want to read you a poem.
Okay.
And then we're going to wrap things up. Okay.
Sure.
So the quiz goes as follows. Let's see how aware you are of your colleagues in your industry. We'll mark it out of 5, let's say. Which famous producer co-founded DreamWorks SKG with Steven Spielberg and Jeffrey Katzenberg? George Lucas,
David Geffen.
Yeah, C. Okay. You get 1 point. We'll give you a lollipop for every point. Who is known for producing the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit series? Should I give you the names?
Peter Jackson.
Frank Marshall, Peter Jackson, Brian Grazer, or Saul Zaentz?
Oh, Saul Zanuck.
So yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We'll give you that one.
But I remember I did say Peter Jackson, and he's one of them.
Is he?
He was the but he directed it.
Do you know all these people?
I know some of them. I
Some of
certainly
them.
know David Geffen. I certainly know Steven Spielberg. I know, and Jeffrey Katzenberg worked for me. Yes,
Which legendary producer worked on Gone with the Wind, 1939, and is
David
known
O.
for his
Selznick. David O. Selznick.
yes, yes. Have you read up on him? Do you know about him or?
I do. He wrote an incredible book, a book about him called Memo. It's a giant book. In fact, I have it right in my library. Yeah, it's an extraordinary book. He would write memo after memo to all kinds of people. And when the only meeting I ever had with Alfred Hitchcock, I asked Alfred Hitchcock, "Tell me about working with Selznick, because he must have driven you crazy." He said, "What I tried to do with the 4 movies I did with him was to make them short so he couldn't cut. I wouldn't let him," he says, "because if I came in longer, he would be cutting. So I wouldn't let." So he knew how to handle it. He did Rebecca with him. He did the Paradine Case. He did Suspicion and Notorious. Those were the 4 movies. And Notorious, if people haven't seen it, Cary Grant, Ingrid Bergman, Claude Rains, one of the finest movies ever made.
Right. And Hitchcock was his movies, in your mind, are the greatest movies ever made, right? They just don't make them that way today.
Well, I wouldn't say the greatest, because I kind of stay away from superlatives.
Okay.
But
Okay.
he made some great movies. He just did. As we said earlier, as did Kazan, and as did Stanley Donen, and as did Vincent Minnelli, and so many others. George Stevens. I mean, there's
Spielberg?
a lot of. I'm sorry.
Spielberg.
Oh, absolutely. And Kubrick. You mentioned Kubrick. There are a lot of great directors. Scorsese has done some great movies. Yeah.
All right. Here,
but
let's
it's hard to say. I get frustrated when people ask me, "What's the movie you would take to the desert island?" I'm looking for help to get off the island.
Yeah.
I'm looking to watch a movie. I
Good
want to
one.
get off.
Exactly.
Get me out of here.
I would take Uncle Buck, by the way. I love Uncle Buck.
Oh, yeah.
I love that movie. Which female producer?
You like heavy actors.
Yes, indeed I do. Robust actor. But John Candy, every single Canadian, Julian, loves John Candy, dead or alive.
Yes, well, and he was from your town, your country, right?
Yeah, he was a local guy. Which female producer is known for her work on films like The Blind Side and Gravity? Kathleen Kennedy, Shonda Rhimes, Sarah Cooper, Alison Owen.
Kathleen Kennedy?
Yes. Excellent.
I got 4 out of 4 so far. I think I should stop.
One more. We're going to do.
Okay, I'll do 1 more. I want to pass this test.
I want it so badly.
Oh, I can't tell you. I'm hungry for it.
If you don't pass it, don't yell at me. Don't get angry with me.
No,
okay?
I won't. I'll take an 80. I take an 80.
Which producer is known for producing blockbusters like Pirates of the Caribbean and Bad Boys? Jerry Bruckheimer, J.J. Abrams, Steven Spielberg, James.
Stop, Bruckheimer.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. Excellent. You did really well.
So that was my producer test. I got 5 out of 5. And all that gets me is what? A hearty handshake.
He gives you a big hug. If I were there, I'd kiss your
cheek. Oh, well, now we're talking something.
I kiss your cheek. All right. So listen, I've been playing around with AI, artificial intelligence. For the last few months, I've asked it to write poems about my guests. So I have an ode to Julian Schlossberg by AI. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, I would. Yeah, sure.
Okay, this is about you, Julian. On this episode, we turn the page to tell the tale of a true sage, Julian Schlossberg, a name to know, whose legacy in the arts will always grow. Born in the Bronx, 1941 the year, in a neighborhood where cultures were near. A middle-class start, but dreams so wide, he worked hard with passion as his guide. From cab driver to busboy, hands-on toil, a typist, a counselor, through life's unspoiled soil. Night classes taken, ambition high, he reached for the stars and he touched the sky. In 1964, ABC was the start. Julian rose through the ranks with his heart. From small steps, he carved a mighty space, a producer, an author, talent manager with grace. He brought to life films that made history, Widow's Peak and In the Spirit, Pure Glory, with no nukes rocking the stage. and Orson Welles' Othello, a classic on the page. He worked with giants, the best of the best, from Neil Simon's wit to Mike Nichols' zest. Barbara's Birthday, Lisa's House was the scene where Julian stood with stars, so serene. He shaped careers and crafted plays, 60 productions through the year's maze. A keen eye for talent, a heart full of fire. His touch turned dreams into something higher. But Julian's path wasn't just about fame. Through his work in the industry earned him acclaims. He met challenges but pressed on with grace, a storyteller at heart, keeping up with the pace. He's an old child, but never alone, for in his work he's made a home, blessed with a journey few can measure, a life filled with moments beyond any treasure. So here's to Julian, a legend so true, whose passion for art and people shines through, a name that echoes, a mark that's bright. In the world of entertainment, he is our guiding light.
Whoa. Well, you've just done Harvey on me.
Yeah, that Harvey's great at that.
That really is something. Thank you, Avrum. Thank you, AI. Thank you. Will you email that to me so I can put it in my coffin?
Yeah. Along with a Rolex watch or what?
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I'm afraid I'll be burnt to a crisp, but that's a whole other story.
Okay, well,
at least I don't have any tattoos.
You don't have any?
No.
No piercings, nothing?
No, I'm too old for that.
What about
marijuana?
Remember,
I did it twice. Once I laughed my head off. Second, I cried my eyes out. I said, "What am I doing this for? I can do that without this. I don't need this." That was that. I never drank anything, beyond an egg cream. Pretty much.
Really? I say you're straight and narrow.
Yeah. Well, yes, I was, as far as that kind of stuff. I mean, there was a time in the business that cocaine was rampant in show business, and I never did it, never wanted it, wasn't interested in it, and never regretted that I didn't do it. So, Avrum, it's a funny thing about life. We often have these roads, the road not taken that people talk about. I'll tell you one last story. I keep saying that, but we keep going. So the one last story is I was having dinner with Woody Allen, and he was talking about something that he regretted. And I said, I don't regret anything. He said, oh, come on, everybody regrets. No, I said, listen, I'm not saying I didn't make mistakes. I made mistakes. I said, but it's all part of the mosaic of my life. I hope I learned from it, but I don't regret it. That's what I did. He says, I don't believe it. Back and forth we went. And finally I said, and I hope you'll get this, and if not, I'll explain it. But I said to him, je regrette rien, which means in French, I regret nothing. But it's what Edith Piaf always said. The great singer Edith Piaf always said, je regrette rien. And so that's what I have to say this. Woody is not a laugher, but he laughed. He laughed at that.
He did laugh? You did laugh?
Yeah, he really did. That's maybe the only time I ever made him laugh. I made him smile, but we did an interview on my show for over an hour, and it was just wonderful to talk to him. He was very forthcoming, and it was a Woody Allen that very few people have ever seen publicly. So I was very proud of that interview. Yeah.
By the way, you're an excellent listener. You're a really good listener in your interviews.
Oh, thank you. I think you are too.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What I really enjoyed about our interview is you understand cues really well, because you yourself have done so many interviews. Sometimes when I talk, and I'll be talking over you, and I apologize for that, you'll stop. You'll just stop, right? And you'll say, okay, what were you going to say? And I think that's the right thing to do. So, Julian, do you want to sort of close our interview here? The show is all about inspiration. It's all about people hearing of others' road in life and how they did well in it, and the challenges and all that. But what can you say of an inspirational flavor for people to take away from this interview?
Well, I don't know about that, Avrum. I'm not sure I can do that as well as I'd like to be able to if I had thought about it. But what I would say is that having spent over 8 decades on the planet, I will say that I truly believe that the most important two things one can do in life is to find someone they love and to find a vacation they want to do. You see, that's it. There's lots of other things, but those are, to me, the two most important things: someone to love and a vocation you want to do. You know, my sentence always is, it's only work if you don't want to do it.
Yes. Yes.
So
how much do you love your wife? This much?
You can't, there's no such thing. It's incomputable. You can't figure it out. It's so enormous. Yes, I do. She is well, she's just everything. She changed my life. She absolutely changed my life. There's no question.
She got the thorn out of your foot.
That's one of many things, but the idea of all the different kinds of intelligence that someone can have, rather than thinking of them as either smart or not smart, but to realize that there's so many other aspects to people, and someone could be uneducated but be an incredible soul on another level. So yeah, I would say how much it's you can't do better than saying she changed my life. You can't say that better. For the good. You could say she changed my life for the bad, but I would never say that about Marin. And here's the most interesting thing about her. She is a fourth generation psychic. Her mother, her grandmother, and her great-grandmother all had what they say in Ireland is the sight. And I've seen it. So, you know, men have a horrible time about this. Women are much more accepting about the ability to see the future or to see the past. But men are much more skeptical. They're not believable. They don't believe. But I've had living proof. I've seen it at least 20 times in my life, including crazy things like going to the airport and getting into traffic. And I say, well, get on the phone and call my office and say, look, book the next flight. We're going to miss this flight. And Marin says, no, we're not going to miss this flight. I said, honey, the flight's 1:00. It's now 1:30. She said, just let's get to the airport. Don't book another flight. And we get to the airport and they're just now loading on. There's been a delay. Now, you know, you can say, oh, well, that could have just happened. Well, yes, it could have, but it happened and I was there for it. And she had such pains and problems sleeping before 9/11. And she said, something bad is going to happen. I said, to us? And she said, no, on a much bigger level than us. She said, I don't know what it is, but I'm having terrible problems sleeping and I know something bad's going to happen. So, you know, someone can say, oh, I don't believe him. So I don't care. Doesn't matter. I had it happen to me. I've seen her do it. I've seen it even in a crazy thing when a sunny day out, she'll say, take a raincoat. I said, honey, it's sunny out. She said, take a raincoat. And at the beginning, I didn't take a raincoat. I got wet. You know, now I take the raincoat. That's all.
Tell me, do you love her well? Do you love well?
Well, I hope so. I mean, yes, I would say this is fair. I'll say a fair statement. All I ever wanted to do, because I started out being as loved as I was by parents and friends and grandmother and everybody, I only wanted to find someone that I could love as much as I liked myself. How much I loved myself. I wanted to find someone, and I actually found in Marin someone I love more than myself. And that I thought would be impossible. Impossible. That's almost 2 words. Impossible. Yes. And yet she did it. She did it. Yes. So yes, I hope I do well, but I'm doing the best. I'm on max. I can't do any better than I'm doing now as far as trying to be a good husband. Yeah.
Julian, you know, I find after this interview that it's very deeply inspiring to me. And I'm really not saying this to be obsequious. I'm telling you from my heart, because you really, truly seem like a lovely human being. You really do. And that your core is good and you deeply care about other people. And I've seen it in your other interviews and I've seen what you do for podcasters. So I really like you. I like you. Thank you for doing this.
I feel the same way, Avrum. And all I can say is that you're lucky you're in Canada or I'd be on your doorstep.
You're always invited here. I'll sleep on the couch. You could take my king size bed.
Well,
But
you see, you're following in your father's footsteps,
I am.
offering me the couch.
Oh, no. I'll take the couch. You can sleep in my bed.
Oh, you're giving me. Oh, wow,
I'm
wow.
giving you the bed. You can have
You
the
know,
bed.
I told you you're an old soul, but you're not
I'm, a,
kidding now. You really are an old soul.
I'm an Alta Cup.
No,
All
no,
right,
no,
lady.
no, 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 not at all. By the way, for what it's worth, I'm born in 1942, not 41. I'm old enough.
Oh, you were born in 1942. Okay, well, that information was incorrect. I apologize.
I,
Well, the
I
way I
no, I
look
want
at
to.
yeah.
It's AI that said it, not you.
Oh, in the poem itself. Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So I was born in 1960. You were 18 when I was born.
Yes, well, don't rub it in.
I won't. But I think it's safe to say, by the way, that I'm pretty ageless. I don't care how old somebody is. I have a friend, Rhoda, who's 93. I've hung out with people who are 100 years old, and I like younger people too. Are you like that? Are you pretty ageless that way?
I'm much more attracted to older people. Always have been. I always was more interested in the older people, and I certainly had my peers, but the older people interested me. Now
Okay,
I counsel. Now I'm counseling a lot of folks, a lot of young people, and I'm enjoying that as well. But I was happiest with the older people because they had a history that interested me, and that doesn't exist anymore. The world has changed so greatly, and there are certainly wonderful things to be said about technology, but one of them is not necessarily bringing people together.
true.
I'm afraid it's doing exactly the opposite with the computer and the iPhone and the iPads and all the I is what I
Yeah,
say.
he's just sein
Yeah,
gesund. Yeah.
yeah.
Do you see yourself as the older person, one of the older people now, or no?
Even if I don't, I am.
Uh-huh. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, of course I do. And I've always been a lecturer. I've always gone over all over the country lecturing to colleges and high schools and civics groups and things. I enjoy that. I enjoy meeting folks and listening to what they have to say. One of the great experiences of my life was to travel the country selling these movies to marketplaces that no one ever heard of.
Yeah.
Waterloo, Iowa, Minot, North Dakota. I mean, these were towns that no one ever knew, but they had a television station. And you
Yes.
see, even the smallest television station in those days was a multi-million-dollar corporation because the tower to be able to broadcast cost millions. So
Interesting.
invariably, what you found in the small towns and cities, and it was very dangerous, was that a group of people, or one or two, owned the radio station, the newspaper, and the television station. Very, very dangerous because they controlled that town's mass media and what went out and what didn't. I was actually shown in a major city in this country that they took the 7 o'clock news from New York City and taped it at 7. They played it back at 6, but they edited the news. Edited the news. Frightening. And that was many, many years ago.
All right. Well, listen, I think we have a great segue there for our next interview. and
I'm in.
We'll do it sooner than later. I want to thank my dear guest today, Julian Schlossberg. Please find his book. It's on Amazon and every major outlet, correct?
It is. And the one that I would love them to look at that we haven't mentioned was my second book, part 2, because that's really many more stories and much more accessible now, because Try Not to Hold It Against Me kind of sold out a little bit.
we won't hold it against you.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being here, because in essence, what you've done is you've accomplished what my goal is for this podcast, and that's to show a very lovely side of humankind. You're a very sweet man, very intelligent human being, very accomplished person, and you know as well as I do, there's certain interviews you do, you're with a person, you like them, they're very intellectual in nature, it's kind of hard to get to their soul. We've all had those interviews. And then there's the other side of the track whereby you really connect with someone, and Yeah, I hope you don't mind if I say this, but I really, really feel as though we connected, and I'm really
And
happy.
not only don't I mind you saying it, but I can only say the same thing. Ditto.
Ditto,
Ditto.
ditto,
Yeah,
ditto.
yes.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah,
question. No, I mean, when that
ditto.
happens, when that happens, we both know we feel we did a good show. That's
I
it.
think we did. I think
Yeah.
we did. Do you
So
remember when you first came across the word ibid?
no, I actually remember thinking that Ibid was some sort of part of the Trojan War. You know, it was one 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 of the people. You know, it. It was like, you'll forgive me. I remember thinking that Fellatio was in Hamlet. He was one of his friends. Yes, Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, and Fellatio.
Okay, Julian, just to sign off, what's the one word you always use? Because you love the word. It's not an easy word. Very few people know it, but you use it anyways. Mine's obsequious.
Oh, I love that word.
Yeah, it's a great word.
I think Avram, for the first time in a long time, you got me. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
got you. Fantastic.
I don't think I can. I can't. I don't know what the hell that word would be.
Part B. Part B.
But
Part B. We'll pick up on that.
But I love obsequious, and I'll tell you what. On the next interview, I'll come up with the word.
Yeah, please do.
And my big failure.
Yes, that'll be the biggest one.
I've got a list for the next show already.
Good luck. Good luck, Julian. Sei gesund on that,
Thank you so much. And
all right, folks, we're signing off here, and I do want to say sei gesund, which means it's Yiddish. Go in good health. Do svidanya, which is Russian for goodbye. Do you know how to say goodbye in any other languages?
Adieu, au revoir. That's in French. We know that. So
very good.
Adios. Adios.
Adios. Do you speak any Hebrew at all? Do you know any Hebrew words?
Only, as I told you, Baruch, Bawrokth. I do know Baruch. I do know Baruch Ator Hanoi, Eloheinu Melech Haolam. I mean, I know what I was taught, but I can't read it at all. But as I said earlier, Avram, I'm pleased about our culture. I'm proud of it, and so many countries came and went, and we never had a homeland till 1948, and we lasted. So there's something to be said. When the Babylonians and the Assyrians and all these people came and went, we're still here. As Sondheim wrote in one of his musicals, we're still here.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Julian. Okay, folks, till we meet again, and we will very shortly. So thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. It's been a wonderful time. Take something out of this interview in your own life. Find your own zone. Make your life great. Draw upon your gift, because life is very, very short. And make it great. Thanks so much. We'll see you again soon.